The annual Winter Charity Gala shimmered beneath the vaulted glass ceiling of the Grand Monarch Hotel in downtown Chicago. Snow drifted softly outside, dusting the sidewalks and blurring the city lights into a silver haze. Inside, warmth and opulence ruled. Crystal chandeliers reflected against polished marble floors, and the sound of a live quartet floated through the air like silk. The event, hosted by the Chicago Children's Foundation, was meant to celebrate generosity, specifically the generosity of Victor Laurent, founder and CEO of Laurent Global Technologies. Billionaire, visionary, self-made icon, Victor stood near the center of the ballroom, impeccably dressed in a tailored black tuxedo. Investors shook his hand. Reporters waited patiently for quotes. Flashbulbs blinked in rapid bursts. Yet none of that held his attention. His eyes were fixed on his 8-year-old daughter, Amara. She was a small constellation of light in a white dress embroidered with tiny silver stars. Her laughter rang brighter than the string instruments as she skipped around the ballroom's decorative indoor fountain, a towering marble structure installed just for the evening. Water cascaded gently over its 3 tiers into a circular basin below, lit from beneath by soft blue lights. "Not too close, sweetheart," Victor called, smiling despite himself. Amara waved back at him, fearless and radiant. Across the ballroom, near a discreet service entrance, stood a boy who didn't match the glittering scenery. Elijah wore a faded gray hoodie and slightly oversized black pants. His sneakers were clean but worn at the edges. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, clutching a small plastic bag in one hand. He wasn't a guest. His mother worked in the hotel kitchen, double shifts most nights. Tonight she'd forgotten her asthma inhaler at home, and Elijah had taken 2 buses across the city to bring it to her. A security guard had stopped him at first, eyeing him suspiciously, but one of the kitchen supervisors confirmed his story and let him wait inside near the back corridor. Elijah tried not to stare at the grandeur. He'd never seen anything like it up close. The chandeliers alone looked like they cost more than every apartment in his neighborhood combined. But then he heard a splash. Not the gentle fountain splash. A heavy one, followed by a scream. Amara had leaned over the marble edge of the fountain, trying to reach a floating decorative candle. Her heel slipped against the slick floor. For one horrifying second she flailed, her small fingers grasping air. Then she disappeared over the low railing and into the deeper center basin, the part designed to conceal the pump system, far deeper than guests realized. The music faltered. Conversations died. Victor's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered against marble. Amara. His voice tore through the ballroom. He ran. But he was too far. And Elijah was closest. He didn't think. He didn't weigh consequences. He didn't notice the stairs. He just moved. Dropping the plastic bag, Elijah sprinted forward and vaulted over the fountain railing. The cold water swallowed him instantly, soaking through his hoodie and stealing his breath. He sank for half a second before kicking hard toward the dim blue light beneath the surface. He saw her white dress swirling like a ghost in the water. She wasn't moving. Elijah grabbed her under the arms and tried to lift, but the fabric ballooned, heavy with water. His lungs burned. Panic tried to claw into his chest. "Come on," he muttered through gritted teeth. He pushed upward with everything he had. Above the water, Victor reached the fountain's edge just as Elijah's head broke the surface. "Help me," Elijah shouted. Victor leaned dangerously over the marble rim, ignoring security hands trying to restrain him. Together they grasped Amara's wrists. Elijah boosted her upward. Victor pulled. Amara's body slid over the railing and onto the marble floor, water pooling beneath her. She coughed weakly, then began to cry, sharp, desperate sobs that echoed like a miracle. Victor collapsed beside her, gathering her into his arms, trembling so violently he could barely breathe. Behind him, security guards reached into the fountain and hauled Elijah out. He landed awkwardly on the marble, water dripping from his sleeves and shoes, hoodie clinging to his thin frame. Guests stared, whispers rippled, some looked stunned, some looked uncomfortable. Elijah stood awkwardly, shivering but trying not to show it. Victor slowly rose, still clutching Amara, and turned. Their eyes met. In that moment, titles meant nothing. Billionaire, CEO, philanthropist, none of it mattered. Victor walked toward the soaked teenager. "You saved her," he said, voice rough. Elijah shrugged slightly, eyes lowered. "I was just there." Victor stared at him, taking in every detail, the trembling hands, the cheap fabric, the quiet dignity. What's your name? Elijah, sir. Victor nodded once. Stay. Security hesitated, unsure of protocol. Victor looked at his assistant. Cancel the rest of my schedule. Then he turned back to Elijah. You're coming upstairs. You need dry clothes. Elijah blinked in disbelief. I should get back to my mom, he said quietly. Victor's expression softened. Bring her to. 3 days later, Elijah stood in an office 60 floors above Lake Michigan at Laurent Global headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline. The winter sun cast pale gold across the room. He'd never ridden an elevator that moved so smoothly. Never stepped onto carpeting this thick. He wore a borrowed blazer provided by the company's executive assistant. It felt stiff against his shoulders. Victor sat behind a large walnut desk, no reporters present, no cameras, no audience. Just him, Elijah, and Amara, who sat nearby swinging her legs happily. She grinned when she saw him. Hi, hero. Elijah flushed. Hi. Victor studied him thoughtfully. I asked about you, Victor said. Elijah stiffened. I learned your mother works 2 jobs, Victor continued calmly. I learned you watch your younger brother after school. I learned you tutor neighborhood kids in math for free. Elijah swallowed. It's just homework stuff. Victor leaned back slightly. Your school counselor says you test in the top 1% statewide. Elijah stared at the carpet. My mom says I just study a lot. Victor was silent for a moment, then spoke more quietly. That night, the room was full of powerful people. Influential people. People who write large checks and make bold speeches. He paused, and they froze. Elijah shifted uncomfortably. You didn't, Victor finished. Amara slid off her chair and walked closer, her expression earnest. I remember seeing you, she said softly. It was blurry, but I saw you. Elijah blinked rapidly. Victor opened a leather folder on his desk and slid it forward. I won't insult you by pretending you saved her for a reward, Victor said. But I also won't pretend I can walk away unchanged. Elijah hesitated before opening the folder. Inside was an official letter bearing the crest of St. Bartholomew Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in Illinois. Victor spoke evenly. Full academic scholarship, tuition, uniforms, transportation, books. All covered through graduation. Elijah's hands trembled slightly. There's more, Victor added. A trust fund set aside for college expenses. And a summer internship program at Laurent Global if you choose it. The room felt suddenly very small. I didn't do it for this, Elijah whispered. Victor nodded slowly. I know. He stood, walking around the desk. That's why I trust you. Elijah looked up, confusion mixing with emotion. Victor continued, success without character is hollow. You showed more character in 5 seconds than many people show in a lifetime. Silence settled, thick but not uncomfortable. Amara stepped forward and hugged Elijah around the waist without hesitation. You have to come to my birthday party, she said firmly. That's non-negotiable. Elijah laughed. A small, surprised sound that seemed to lighten the entire office. Victor extended his hand formally. Elijah shook it, but after a moment, Victor pulled him into a brief, firm embrace instead. It wasn't for cameras. It wasn't for headlines. It was gratitude. As Elijah left the building later that afternoon with his mother, who had cried openly in the executive lobby, he glanced once more at the skyline stretching endlessly before him. 3 days earlier, he had stood near a service entrance, invisible to most of the room. Now doors had opened he hadn't known existed. Back upstairs, Victor stood by the window watching the city below. He thought about wealth, about power, about how easily comfort can create distance. That night at the fountain had done more than save his daughter's life. It had stripped away illusion. Courage had not worn a tuxedo. It had worn worn-out sneakers and a gray hoodie. And Victor knew something with absolute certainty. The bravest person in that ballroom had been the one with the least to lose, and the most to give.